right, well, we can get started with some logistics here. Welcome to today's V3 implementation call. Today is March 12th, 2025. And if you haven't already updated your name and affiliation in your screen, we would appreciate that, or in the chat if you need to put it there. And just as a reminder, we do record these meetings. They are shared on the NEMSIS YouTube channel, so you can always go back and review or share them with coworkers who may wish to see them as well. And we do encourage your participation. So please jump in, raise your hand, or put a question in chat. If we don't have a chance to answer your chat question, we do review all those after the meeting as well and can reach out to you directly if we missed something or did not have a chance to answer your question on the call. And let's get started today with our first item. Let me share our agenda with you here. Oops, sorry. And first up is John Britt with a stakeholder introduction.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to do this. Yeah.
You need to share your screen, John?
I'm sharing it. Yeah, I just told it to.
Okay.
Just takes it a second. There we go. So good morning, everyone. I am excited to actually be able to introduce someone this morning, and I hope he's on the call. He's brand new. But so for new stakeholder introductions, why do we do it? As I say every time, it's get to know others on the call, to build connections, get maybe some new ideas for hobbies, spotlight somebody for 30 to 45 seconds, have some fun, and maybe put a face to a name. Why it's not letting, I just told it to go to the next slide. There we go. We asked, what do you like to do to relax or unwind? And he said golf, fish, or camp. So the University of Utah, we're using the new Copilot. It's the only one we're allowed to use. So I asked it to create an image for golfing, fishing, and camping. And I really love the golfing rod that it created there over the fire. That's pretty interesting, I thought. But has nothing to do with our stakeholder, though. It is not, my slides are not advancing the way they're supposed to. Interesting facts. He was a swift water technician while on the fire department. And I thought it did a great job creating this graphic, except for the fact that this firefighter is wearing a air pack, standing on the shore looking at a boat. I'm not sure why he would be doing that. But anyway, how long have you been in EMS healthcare data? 22 years. And what he likes best about the job is that he's got numerous opportunities exist for learning new things. So any guesses? Welcome to Mr. John Wright, the new EMS data manager for the Mississippi State Department of Health. We're glad to have you on board. And I've enjoyed working with you so far. And as always, if you've not been introduced, there's a quick QR code you can scan and do it from your phone. And of course, as always, I'll put a link in the chat if you're doing it from a computer. And then possibly next year, you can be part of this group of people from our annual slide, or from our annual meeting. And that's it. Back to you, Lauri.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. Next up, we have an update from the NHTSA Office of EMS, and I think Eric Cheney's on the call to give that update today.
Cheney is in the office, live and in person from downtown Washington, D.C. So if you don't see the palm trees in the background anymore, that's why. Just a quick update on several things. I know there's a lot of information coming out. We're talking about some critical patches and things here in a little bit. So if you have questions, please, by all means, let me know what they are. I'm happy to address them to the best of my ability. Many of you heard me talk about the new contract for NEMSIS. That's still moving forward. We're working through the GSA responses right now that were submitted and following the paperwork trail. So that piece is still moving forward. And the annual meeting that Clay and I talked about, I've had some questions about whether or not that's going to happen. That's still on the books. In fact, we've committed the hotel. We've committed the hotel rooms. So at this point, we can't back out of that contract. We are also looking at scholarships for this year, like we've done in the past. So I'm sure they're going to talk about that today, if not today, sometime in the very near future, about submitting for them. So that's still moving forward in that process. I don't want to step on Renee's thunder or anyone else's, but if you have information or topics that you would like addressed at the annual meeting, please let us know what they are. I always like to get your input, time for input, anything like that. Please let me know. And I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions of me from the participants today. Originally just entered. I thought it was a question. Chat. No questions at all.
Anything in the chat?
So I'll just end with, look, thank you all for the work, for the patience. I've put the TAC through some abnormally short deadlines, even shorter than normal, with a lot of requests that are really off the beaten path. So if we're a little slower to respond right now, that's the reason, and I apologize for that. We should be back on track here this week, after this week, and things should be moving forward. So I'll stop there, and if there's any questions throughout the meeting, just let me know.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eric. Next up, we have Clay Mann, who's going to give an update on our critical patch.
All right, great. Great to be with you all. Thanks for joining us today as we continue to kind of work through the requirements that are associated with the presidential executive orders. Thank you so much for hanging with us. I'm gonna kind of give an update, and then hopefully we can go through some questions that some of the data managers presented earlier in kind of a closed session, talking about how they were going to respond to some of the changes. So happy to work through those, but we'll give you a quick update. So we are still on track to be able to release what will be critical patch number 5, just because there's been other critical patches to 3.5.0 and critical patch number 1 for 3.5.1. Those are still on schedule to be released between April 3rd and April 17th. So far, there's been no glitches. We'll probably be closer to April 3rd. So we're glad that is going well. If it comes out earlier, either those critical patches come out earlier, we will let you know, but you can count on that week of April 3rd. Just to remind folks a little bit about what that will potentially look like, we will be deprecating 2 elements that were related to capturing gender of the patient and the provider. This element is not removed, it is deprecated, and the recurrence on patient 13 will be changed to a 0-to-1 versus a 1-to-1. This will allow this element to be able to remain in the standard. Data will flow back and forth from agencies to the state to the national level, flowing in that direction without issue, because it is deprecated and because that recurrence is changed to 0-to-1. And the new elements will be added, e-patient 25, which will be a measure of the patient's sex, and e-personnel 40, the EMS personnel's sex. You can see the code list that will be available there. You'll notice that there will be not values associated with these elements. And then for the first time, there will be a pertinent negative kind of associated with this type of an element. So those pertinent negatives are provided as another way for states to kind of manipulate their thinking about what they plan to do with the issues of sex and gender. You'll also note that the recurrence for e-patient 25 will be 0 to 1 in the first set of critical patches that are sent out. That again will allow it to be there or not be there during this transition period. We're planning on 3 months so that no files will fail as people are moving to the critical patch at slightly different time periods. And then we hope within 3 months, we'll send out a second very small critical patch that the only change will be to make e-patient 25 a 1-to-1 element. And so it becomes a regular required national element. Now, during that 3-month period between the release of those 2 critical patches, we're planning for a very brief compliance process that vendors can go through. We're devising it so that it will be a very short process, probably an hour, to be able to complete that working with Jen. We'll put out here quickly the requirements as we're kind of putting them together as to what would be required just during that time period to kind of help people while that reoccurrence is set, right? Getting people tested and getting the critical patches out. Hopefully that will smooth out most of the concerns that folks have about the critical patch. So any questions just quickly on the process of the release of those patches?
This is Lauren from Zoll. Just really quick, we're going to have a compliance testing for critical patch 5 for 350 and for CP1 351. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or okay. Even though 351 might not be developed yet.
Right. And you may not want to test for it during that time period. If you're not moved over to 3.5.1, there's no need to test for it. Thank you, Lauren. I understand your question. That's a great question. Yeah, you'll be tested on your current product for the critical patch associated with your current product. Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. That was a good clarification.
Lauren, is there any concern with that? I just want to, I think I understand your question is you want to make sure that you're not forced into 351 because of this critical patch. I just want to make sure that's the case and that this isn't putting you in some awkward position or something.
No, if we're testing against our current process, I think that's good. And the other concern was just if there was any date constraints around having to compliance test with 351.
Yeah, no, 351 hasn't been affected by this at all. We're not changing anything with 351. This is just an added step.
Thank you all.
And I've tried to say this, and this is politically correct as I can be, folks. 3.5, the change for this new change, is basically not meant to do anything other than make sure your software works with the submission. This is not like a stick in hand compliance assessment for this next critical patch, I just want to make that very clear.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So I think I missed when the dates are that this is to be available for states. Do you have a date on that?
Yeah, sure. We can provide dates in regards to when it will be available, right? So we're hoping that it will be released on April 3rd. And so critical patch 5 for 3.5.0 and critical patch 1 for 3.5.1. No one will be moved to 3.5.1 by then, right? So it will be the critical patch for 3.5. So we'll release that on April 3rd. Vendors will have basically 3 months to move to test for the critical patch and hopefully get everybody moved to the critical patch before the second small critical patch comes out that just changes that recurrence from 0 to 1 to 1 to 1 for e-patient 25. So To answer your question, Sharon, somewhere in that 3-month period after April 3rd. Is that helpful?
It looks like Amber.
Yeah, so like the vendors have 3 months after April 3rd to make their adjustments, and then after that 3-month period, then all the vendors should have their adjustments made. Is that correct?
Yes, Sharon.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. David?
I just wanted to check in with the state transition plans. So, if any state is going to be not done with their process, but at the end of that 3-month period, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, thank you, David. It's good to make that comment. Chip?
I just want to clarify a previous statement that you guys had made that if somebody submits the current gender .13, it's deprecated, so that can still be collected in the 3.5 data set, right, and submitted to you guys and goes off into like mysterious place of none. So because this kind of come up with us discussing with the vendors. So basically we can continue to collect 0.13 in the data set, even though it's quote unquote deprecated. Is that also true for 351, or that should be true for 351, correct?
Yes, sir. That will be true for both versions, and there's no plan yet to change its status from deprecation to renewal or to removal.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right. Thank you, because I think that may I had to skip off of our closed call before, but I think that may be a big factor in how things get executed.
Yeah, Chip, I fully agree. Right. So again, I'll reiterate, right? The elements will be deprecated. The gender elements are deprecated but not removed, and there's no plan to change that status from deprecation to removal.
Thank you.
You bet, Chip. Thank you.
There's a few questions in chat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It looks like Amber, you had a question about e-patient 13 being 0 to 1 or 1 to 1. Did Jen and Kevin answer that for you, or do you still have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I got confused because I thought the deprecated value, that slide was showing the current state with just the strike through in it, but actually, technically what happens is when it gets deprecated, it transitions from a 1 to 1 to a 0 to 1. Am I getting it right?
You are,
Okay.
Amber. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, it was a 1 to 1. It moves to a 0 to 1.
Great, thanks. Sorry for the confusion on my part.
Oh no, no worries, Amber. It's a little confusing for sure.
Then Ridgely's asking, will it change to 1 to 1 after 3 months?
Yes, ma'am. The e-patient 25.
Yep. So around the beginning of July. And then Nick from First Due says, can you comment on the compliance process for those vendors who need to complete their 2-year compliance process as it relates to the quick compliance version, or sorry, quick compliance versus the normal 2-year compliance?
Yeah, Nick, a great question. So we're hoping that this quick compliance for the critical patch will not disrupt your regular process for compliance. And Nick, if First Due is in that 3-month period, right, well, we'll clearly work with you. The critical patch, the quick compliance testing, it's going to be one very, very simple test case that has as minimal data as possible. And it'll be one quick look at your GUI to make sure that it's present, and then you'll be done. So it'll be a very quick process that you can do kind of separate from your regular compliance process.
And
Jen, go ahead. Yeah, Jen's got this all worked out. Thanks, Jen.
if you're in your normal 2-year or you asked for an extension because this all kind of coincided with your anniversary date that you need to be certified by, the compliance test cases have all been updated to accommodate the critical patch. So once that's been released, you'll be able to go through the regular compliance. It will include the critical patch, but you would still have that 90-day window.
Yeah, Jen, and can you answer Lauren's question as well? She asked, will the vendors need to apply to test for critical patch?
No, just open up a help desk ticket for the critical patch. So nothing changes if you're in your regular 2-year compliance cycle. If you're just doing the critical patch, open up a help desk ticket.
Yeah, originally, and to answer your question, as mentioned by Chip, right, by deprecating e-patient 13 and D-personnel 12, that data, if sent, will be collected and will be stored in a location that just won't be accessible for use, but it will be saved. All right, Melissa asks, Melissa, are you available to ask your question? Happy to read it.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can, Melissa.
So if an element is deprecated, isn't it no longer national? And if it's not national, don't the vendors leave national or non-national elements off the XML file? So it wouldn't even be in the file for you to even accept it. And if that's true, then do the states have to make a special request to the vendors to include it in the XML file?
Yeah, Melissa, because it's deprecated, it remains in the XML file with the status of deprecation. So it's not removed.
Okay.
It's not required to be sent to the national level because it's been deprecated. It remains, it will be present in every record that is sent or received by any station, regardless of whether you choose to use it or to not use it, it will be present in the XML.
Okay, so elements and values that are called deprecated or obsolete, they're still not removed. So elements have to be removed, specifically removed for them to be. But I guess it's still not clear because it's still removed from the data dictionary, though, right? It's just not officially removed.
It will be present in the dictionaries as deprecated. Yeah.
So it's present, but it's deprecated. Okay.
Right. The process of deprecation is a process we've used in the past. It's basically kind of a sign of what's coming, right? So an element will be deprecated. We're saying, hey, we're going to remove this element. It was required in the past. Get ready. We're kind of removing it. But we're just going to keep it in deprecation for now so everybody can get used to the idea that it would be removed. That's in the past how we've used the process and status of deprecation. This, of course, is a little bit of a different situation. And so we're not kind of sure if it will be removed, but it's certainly deprecated for now and remains in the standard. Does that help, Melissa?
Yeah, one more thing. So when the data dictionary becomes visible again, it will still have e-patient 13 written on it, but in the deprecated format?
It will look like this.
Okay. So that's the first time I've seen that. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's probably helpful, Melissa.
Well, no, I mean, I've seen this, but I've never seen one of these in a current data dictionary.
Oh, yeah. We the only place that it's currently present in the data dictionary is in e-injury 03 and 04, where we had to deprecate some older values to the trauma triage criteria that the American College of Surgeons was putting together. So values have been deprecated kind of in the past, but entire elements this hasn't happened for quite a long time.
All right. Thanks. That makes it easier.
Yeah. Thanks, Melissa. It should.
Keenan had a question clarifying your critical patch testing will look for the addition of sex and not the deprecation of gender in the UI. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, right, Jen? Yep,
Yeah, that's perfect.
yep.
And then
Dustin,
yeah,
I'll
Dustin,
go
I
ahead.
can read it here. Is there an expected date for the data dictionary on the NEMSIS website to be online?
Yeah, that was a couple of other updates that I wanted to just make real quickly. We still plan to have the data dictionaries come up at the same time as the release of the critical patches, so probably on or around April 3rd. It will be the same for the Git repository. All of that, kind of all those tools will come up at the same time.
Good. Any other questions?
Hi, Clay. Sorry, that's Chip. I just stepped away for a minute. Maybe you covered this in the 2 minutes I was away. If something is deprecated in the XML, can we still write schematron rules against it?
Oh, wow, that's a very good question. Jen or Josh?
Yeah, the answer is yes to that.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Yep.
Then David Saylor has a question. Any changes to mappings that NEMSIS published, like HL7?
Oh, with HL7, that's a great question, David.
Yeah,
Josh?
I'll update those right after the critical patch is released, so that they will account for essentially they can account for the gender elements or the sex element, whichever one is there. So yeah, update is needed there.
Okay, great. And then just the only other update I have, we have reopened the use of the public release research data sets. So if you have any of your citizens within your state researchers that are asking when that will come back up, it is now up. We have quite a backlog during that period where we're down, so we're working through those as quickly as we can. The new legacy data sets are the same as before, except that ePatient 13 has been removed. That data, of course, has been archived and saved and associated with a record level identifier. So we still have that data. It's set aside for now, and researchers can continue with their research work minus ePatient 13. Any questions about the research data sets? Okay. Again, thank you for your patience. Thank you for helping us work through this. We're 100% committed to helping you as states work through this, as Eric mentioned, and Kevin's going to go through some specific questions here, I think perhaps next. So let's just make sure that we get all of the questions answered. Keenan?
Clay, where's that data set, the research data set going to be archived? That includes the ePatient 13 data?
Within our AWS instance.
Okay. Is that something that we can request a copy of before it goes into archival?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Great question, Keenan. Yeah.
All right. Any other resource updates, Claire? Shall we pass it to Kevin? Answer some more questions.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Thank you, everyone. Ridley had one more question. Sorry, not sure I understood. For data sent prior to the patch, researchers cannot get to gender. Yeah, so the data sets going back to the beginning of version 3, so 2017, have all been re-aggregated without ePatient 13. So ePatient 13 will not be present in any of the legacy data sets. That will also be true for the 2024 data set that's about to be released.
Probably easier to speak. This is Ridgely. So will you be translating that data into sex if researchers want to look at things by that way, or is it just not possible to do anything?
Yeah, Ridley, that is a great question. So yeah, I mean, if you're a researcher and you have If you have a research project related that relates specifically to sex, right? Then how will you do that? So what we've done in the past when we've had elements like your geography elements, your zip code elements that we don't release, we'll just build them a custom element that said, was this patient female? Yes or no? And then we'll provide that custom element with that data set so that that researcher can do the proper stratification of the data.
Okay, so they can still sort of get what they're looking for. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. They'll still be able to get to what they're looking for. Not ideal, but
Yeah, so sorry, it's complicated for you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Reggie.
thanks, Richard.
All right, let's pass it to Kevin. He's going to answer some more questions about the critical patch. You ready, Kevin?
Yeah. So I think Clay answered most of them, but I'm gonna just go through. We got some direct questions from Amber that it sounds like you guys had a really great turnout. Over 44 states were represented and a lot of vendors. So we got a couple questions that we want to follow up. Clay answered most of those, but I'm gonna go through them real quick. We were talking about deprecation and what it looks like for an element to be deprecated. So the NEMSIS definition, like Clay had mentioned, it's going to be potentially removed from future versions. It still can be used. It just won't be supported. And how that relates directly to ePatient 13, the questions that we kind of got were, can it remain in the state system? Can you continue to send data in ePatient 13? Will it break the XSD? And will it be in the XSD? And so to answer those questions, yes, it can remain in the state system. You can continue to collect it. And you can still send it to the national level. As Dr. Mann had mentioned, it's going to be placed into a separate spot, so it won't be available for use at the national level. That means that it will remain in the XSD, so we won't have a worry about it being broken, and it won't cause a submission to fail if that data is included in that. And then so the last question also with this ePatient 13 is the intention right now is that it will remain in the XSD for the foreseeable future. So there'll be a warning for ePatient 25, and can it stay as a 0 to 1 even though it's a national element? So a couple of visuals. So is a required element. So that means if it's absent, ePatient 25 is required. If it's absent, it will result in a warning. But it will allow for not values, as Dr. Mann said. Currently, we're accepting not applicable, not recorded, and not reporting. And so we also have there also will be 2 pertinent negatives in ePatient 25 that have refused and unable to complete. And after critical patch 5 for 3.5.0 and critical patch 1 for 3.5.1, the recurrence, like we said, was 0 to 1. And at this time, we're planning the critical patch 6 and critical patch 2 after that 3-month time frame, which will change the recurrence to 1 to 1. So those are just some quick visuals, and like we said, we covered most of them. Did anyone have any additional questions?
So when that changes to 1 to 1, is it going to act like things like the transfer of care date and time, where if you put in a not value or pertinent negative, then you get a warning against you, even though you've actually submitted a value that's acceptable within the 1 to 1?
Yeah, I can chime in on that.
Sure.
That's correct. If you didn't choose one of the values of male, female, or unknown, and a patient was evaluated and care was provided, then that warning will show.
Okay.
So it'll act exactly the same as the warning on gender does today.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Chip. Anything else? Anyone else?
We had one question in chat here from Kevin Putman. I think the answer to this is yes, but I heard something to the contrary earlier this week. Was the national EMS database moved to NHTSA servers?
Clay, do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. No, the NEMSIS IT infrastructure remains in an AWS instance that is maintained by the University of Utah.
And Amber, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Josh clarified here. The new national schematron warning for ePatient 25 should be recorded when patient evaluation or care is patient evaluated and care is provided. And then Amber's just saying thanks to Kevin's question.
Okay. Amber, if you would like, I can get with Chris to have these slides sent over if you'd like. If that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. I was secretly taking snapshots anyway, so
you could just ask me. You could just ask. It's fine. I'm an open book, so yeah, I'll get these slides sent out to you guys. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Yeah, well, I'll make sure the PDFs go out today.
Sorry, I have one question. This is Anne from Arizona, and I have a cold, so I sound funny. My concern with it when it goes to one, the patient 25 is the confusion that might happen in the states when agencies see a warning saying they should fill out an element that I think some states aren't even going to institute. So I don't know if there's a way to mitigate that or a way to opt out of having that national schematron warning pop up for agencies. I realize that sounds like an odd request, but do you see my point? It can be very contradictory depending on how the state goes. Like our state's not going to change our data dictionary mid-year. We kind of lock it down for 1 year as we go through. So is there any way to mitigate that?
Jen, do you have any insight in that? Our Dr. Mann?
Yeah, I know Anne raises a great question that I think we can take back and talk about, but it's a great question, Anne, and I understand critical patches can be really kind of invasive when you have a routine within your state. So let us take that question back if that's okay, Anne.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Clay.
Would you?
I would.
Oh, real quick, Anne,
Hey,
would you mind sending that as in an email just so that we can make sure that we get that correct?
Sure. If I can remember exactly what I said, I will try. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. And Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry to jump in. Anne may want to stab me after this one, but I completely understand what she's saying there. I would provide the alternative piece that, I feel like NEMSIS is the national data set and that there's a lot of, take this element outside of it, there's a lot of elements within NEMSIS that have warnings when we send the data to NEMSIS that we as a state have potentially looked at and said, you know what, it's great that it's in the NEMSIS data set and required and there's a warning, but we're not interested in the state in putting this in our schematron, and we're not interested in making agencies answer this. And we just know as a state going in that, guess what, these are going to be warnings when it's submitted to NEMSIS. Now, I think I saw it in the comments. The benefit is if we don't have it in our schematron, then our vendor is a repository. All the other vendors that are submitting data to us, all of them should absolutely be able to not have that show as a warning for agencies submitting that data to the state, because they can control those warnings at the vendor level and handle that piece. And the only time the warning would really show up, and still should show up, is when it gets submitted to NEMSIS on that piece of it. And then the state would get a warning for it there. But prior to that submission, I think all the vendors should be able to handle and not have it show warnings depending on what the state's preference is on that.
Is that possible, Clay, or is that something that breaks the, I don't know, agreement?
It's a great question, Anne, right? All of us here do such a fantastic job of maintaining a national standard that forces everybody to compromise a little for the greater good, right? And we're all committed to that, and we all continue to be committed to that. What Chad describes is happening now, right? Right, and there are clearly good reasons why individual states have individual needs, and so it's a balance that we all make. So what Chad's describing certainly could be true. Chad, um, um, I'm sure uses that model very conservatively, right? And we hope that everybody does, right? All we're trying to do is improve the quality of the data that we're all collecting. So yeah, and that's clearly a possibility.
Any other questions? We really appreciate the dialogue. We really do. We take it all very take notes, take them in detail, discuss them later, and really try to have the greatest impact while also having the least amount of impact. So we appreciate that. Anything else we can do to answer? Okay. If you think anything else, please put it in the chat. We always export it the chat every meeting and review it to make sure that we've answered everything appropriately. So put in a help desk ticket, shoot us an email, whatever we can do to continue to help. Or if you have any concerns, please voice them so that we can evaluate them as well. Thanks. I'm going to kick it over to you, Lauri.
Thanks, Kevin. Up next, we're going to go to Jen. She has a quick maintenance update.
I feel like I got the easy topic this week meeting. Maintenance schedule. We are going to have maintenance as normal on the March 18th and 19th, which is the third Tuesday and Wednesday of the month. If you experience any issues during this time, just please try back again later. And if you have any questions, as always, our help desk is available.
Good. Thank you, Jen. And up next, we have Jen and Casey who are going to talk about eResponse 05 values and lift assist or wheelchair transports.
Good morning, everybody. I will start us off with the conversation. So we've had a few different stakeholders express concern around documenting wheelchair transports and lift assists. Specifically, as mentioned, eResponse 05, which is a type of service requested. So as a tech, we see wheelchair transport, lift assist as two different things. So we kind of want to keep those topics separate. Today we'll just go over wheelchair transport. Hopefully this will be the easier topic to address. So one thing is that there hasn't really been specifics communicated as to like what specifically the issue is. Is it issues with billing? Is it issues with if you select a certain call type, then all of a sudden the clinicians have to fill out more information. Perhaps they feel that it's over documentation, overkill, etc. So we would like to know if anyone out there has any additional information to add to that as far as what some of the issues are, or what some of the concerns are, what's causing the issues.
Chris, are you in a place where you can, Chris Montero, are you in a place where you can unmute?
Yeah, so we brought this one up from our customers' perspective. Many of them are complaining because the wheelchair disposition was removed from the newest version of NEMSIS. That negatively impacted their ability to actually send a bill for those, because the dispositions that currently exist either require some sort of patient contact or don't, whereas most of the time a wheelchair transport is some sort of it needs some patient demographic information so they can generate the bill, but it doesn't require vital signs and all the other types of issues that a normal transport would. We've given workarounds, but it's less than elegant for them, especially when it comes to Medicaid reimbursement for some of these. So we were asking that there be some sort, and it doesn't have to say wheelchair, just some sort of different disposition that allows for a transport of these types.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
I ask a clarifying question real quick, Chris? So for those agencies where they were experienced billing issues, do they consider a wheelchair transport like a non-patient transport type of call where
Correct. Yeah,
so
because they don't do any patient care. However, they do need patient demographic information.
And generally the attendant who is on the call is not a licensed clinician, right? They're really just a driver.
And they're not dual staffed. So
Right.
be a single, like GMR uses EMTs, for instance, or something like that for their as the lowest level. But some you're and Samantha's right that most of the time it's a non-clinician or an EMR or something like that.
Chris, in New Hampshire, we had someone doing that for a while, and I basically just had to build them a separate form, modify the labels of the existing fields, and unfortunately, I had to put in caveats into almost all of my validation or many of my validation rules, so that if the type of service requested was wheelchair van, it just ignored the rules. And then I didn't submit those records to NEMSIS because, from a NEMSIS standpoint, they were essentially incomplete EMS records. So it was more of a convenience for the service to be able to do billing, but it was a bunch of work to make it work, if that makes sense.
Completely agree.
Josh, go ahead. You have your hand up there.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Chris, if they set the unit disposition to non-patient incident and they set the transport disposition to a non-patient transport, and then they left patient evaluation care and crew disposition blank, there would be no national validation rules triggered as a result of that. But I guess, is it still an issue because maybe the software decides not to show them the patient demographic fields?
Sometimes that it varies, right? And here's where the clash comes. Some of the states then, if we do that, don't want to see patient information. So then it clashes that we, and some states want to see the wheelchair disposition sent or these type of they want to see all the calls in the system. So these would be that's the variability in it, right? Some of these are even though there's a patient attached to it and a destination oftentimes, the state sees that as a quote unquote transport and wants to see it. Other states don't care, and we can get around that rule. But yeah, it's not great, but that's because of what the issue you just described. That doesn't when they start filling out all the other information, it creates a clash in NEMSIS.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess at least at the state and local level that there might be validation rules that say, hey, you said you had a non-patient incident. Why are you giving us information about a patient? Why are you giving us insurance info, whatever else? Yeah, so there's no national rules preventing that combo, but I could see how there could be state rules affecting it.
And I do want to read a comment. Caitlin from Angel Track said eResponse 07 has a value for wheelchair van that she wanted to point out. And then I have just a follow-up question. Are there other states that have done what CHIP has done, that they have modified the way they've collected data for wheelchair transports?
Jen, this is Chad in Kansas, and we have not. Well, a couple of things. One, it's 100% states treat this differently. Some states, us being one of them, we don't. Our state rules don't. We don't oversee wheelchair transports. If that's all an agency does, they don't even have to license with us. So some states heavily license those, and so that's creating some of the conflict there. We haven't had to do it with wheelchair stuff, but we have had to manipulate the system. In other stuff, we require agencies to track all requests. So even if they get a transfer and turn it down, we want to know that information to be able to track that. And so we've had to create some stuff in our system where there's other dispositions that are excluded. The rules all get excluded, and they're excluded from being sent to NEMSIS, just so we can still capture the data and not worry about it getting sent to NEMSIS and being hit with all kinds of warnings and things like that. So we've had to do the same thing, just not for this specific issue.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry. This is Claire. I was just going to say, I wonder if this is a great conversation. I wonder if it makes sense for us to try to standardize, right, the most efficacious approach for wheelchair transports, and maybe some of the other things that Chad found, just for now, maybe Chad, maybe we could work with the DMC, right, to come up with a standard approach that minimizes effort until we can modify the standard. But I'd love, for these type of issues where we're not correctly capturing a call as EMS kind of expands their services, we probably need to do our best to be modifying the standard to have those work well.
Yeah, and I think Clay, the DMC would be glad to help with that. But I think, in looking at all of it, and I bet Chip would agree with this, it is way easier for us as a state, and I think even the vendors, if the options are in the national standard, and to have more things in the national standard, and then us as a state to be able to come in and say, okay, we don't do on the wheelchair side, for instance, it's better to have that stuff in the national standard, and then a state to be able to say, oh yeah, we do this, so we could still use it, or another state to say, you know what, we don't even oversee wheelchair stuff, so we're not even going to make that an option in our system. And then we don't have to worry about it. But it's much easier for those options to be there from the national side than it is for the option to not even be there, and us as a state to have to try and figure out, man, we do this wheelchair stuff. How are we going to capture it? And how can we capture it in the same system that we're capturing everything else in, because that's where we need it, without affecting all of our other NEMSIS rules in there. So I'm a very supportive of more stuff being in the NEMSIS thing when it comes to options like this, because it makes it easier for us to either implement or not implement at the state level.
Yeah, great comment, Chad. Thank you.
And somewhat to Chad's point then, we did have a suggestion to add wheelchair transport as a type of service requested in that e-response 05. And then states be able to write rules around it that would help accommodate needed documentation for that. So how does everyone feel about that? Currently in e-response 05, there is other medical needs transport, which encompasses wheelchair transports, but it's not specific. So certainly on the billing side, that can cause some issues we can see. So how would people feel about that? And we can bring that back for development and review. Does it seem like that might help mitigate those issues some?
It seems like it could be a good thing.
Chad.
I could see people hesitating to choose other routine medical transport because it's the question of, well, was this really a medical transport or not? The patient was in a wheelchair, but we didn't have to provide any care. So maybe we want to call it a non-medical transport or something. Yeah, so I think an additional value would fit well within the existing list.
Thank you, Josh.
And to Josh's point, I think something that it could, we're talking specifically about wheelchair, but the reality is, I know we have stretcher vans in the state of Kansas that it's still people that don't have any medical oversight. They're just put on a stretcher because they can't sit in a wheelchair and nobody's tending to them. And so I think having that piece that's not tied to medical thing, but still a transport option and covers things like the wheelchair, the stretcher van, that stuff would definitely be beneficial.
And I know in my experience working on the ambulance in my area, we didn't have wheelchair vans, unfortunately. So as the ambulance, we did all those wheelchair runs, and we had similar problems with this that we had to do some work around. So I can certainly see, especially in those instances, having that added value would be beneficial. Well, if there's no other discussion on that, we can certainly work on developing that. Otherwise, it looks like Josh is next on the agenda with some performance measures discussion.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Let me get my screen share ready here. Switch topics a little bit. Let's see. Okay, just bringing up my screen share. And this is also a topic that's not related to the critical patch. How about that? Want to go over some performance measure stuff and some recent changes related to performance measures. And so I'm going to start on the NEMSIS website. I brought up the performance measure for asthma 01, which is administration of beta agonist for asthma. In 2021, NEMSIS made some changes to some of their performance measures. And this was one of them. This one used to be called Pediatrics 02, and it was a pediatric specific performance measure. And the change that they made in 2021 is they made this a general performance measure, and then they introduced the concept of populations. And so in this one, they have a population that would just be all patients, and then a population that would be adults, and a population that would be pediatrics. I'm going to show you today how support for this populations concept has been added in the National Performance Measures Service, but wanted to start there on the NEMSIS website to kind of show you what our goal was. I also I want to show kind of end-to-end the performance measures web service in addition to the performance measures dashboards. And that's because I think that I get the sense that the performance measures web service is underutilized by software developers. It's a web service that you can hit to get performance measure data from the national EMS database so that you can allow your customers to see some benchmarks and compare their performance to national performance among agencies that are like theirs. So with that, then I'm going to back up a little bit and go to the web services page of the NEMSIS website under technical resources. This page has, of course, the general submission web service stuff, but at the bottom, it's got documentation about the performance measures API. And this is where you'll go as a software developer to get the technical guide for using this API, getting the WSDL for the API that you can load into your development environment. We'll take a look at the dashboard that NEMSIS provides momentarily. And then the measure definitions. The measure definitions take you to this wiki site where you can see which performance measures the NEMSIS TAC has implemented so far that have been published by NEMSIS. And you'll see asthma 01 is one of those measures. And so that's where you can get all the documentation for that web service. And the way we decided to implement the populations, we looked at the NEMSIS measures, all the ones that they broke into populations so far had been related to patient age, looking at adult versus pediatric. And so that's how we decided to implement, was to actually just add an additional dimension that you can slice and dice the data by. So in addition to all the existing dimensions about various attributes that an agency may have, there's this new dimension now called patient age, and that is documented here in the wiki site. So pediatric is less than 18 years and adult is 18 years or greater. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to go over to SOAP UI, which will allow me to interact with this web service. I have a request where I can list the benchmarks that the NEMSIS Performance Measures web service provides data for. I get a list here of these NEMSQA measures. I can also do a list parameters request where it will tell me which parameters the web service supports. Well, except that my SOAP UI just froze. Let's try that again.
Man, don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah, it always happens on demos, right? Ran it
Demos
plenty
are
of
the
times this morning.
repair person's there, and honest, it's broken, I promise.
All right, SOAP UI. Gone. Okay, let's get it back. One moment, sorry for the delay. Any minute now. Okay. All right, let's get back in there. So we listed benchmarks. Okay, we can list parameters. Now I just got to get my stuff back where I had it. Okay. So the web service will give you all the different parameters by which you can slice and dice the performance measure data. And then finally, we have retrieve benchmark, which will allow you to get data for a particular performance measure. So I'm going to ask for asthma 01. Now that we've added patient age, I can ask for it to be divided up by patient age. And so then it'll give me the data for asthma 01, and it'll break it down. So I've got numerators and denominators for adults, for pediatrics, and for those patients where their age was blank. So then as a software developer, you could take these numbers, store them in your database, and when your customers are running reports about their own performance on asthma 01, then you could show a national comparison. You could also filter the data or segment it by all those other parameters that I showed you on the list parameters response. So I wanted to demonstrate that web service to remind you of what's there and how you could utilize that to provide data to your customers that comes from the National EMS database. All right, well, finally, for the non-technical, the NEMSIS Performance Measure dashboard is on the NEMSIS Public Dashboards page, which you can get to by going to View Reports and then Public Reports. There's also a state-specific dashboard on the State Reports page that requires a state login, and you can see the data specific to your own state. So when I bring up the Performance Measures dashboard here, then the recent addition that we've made to it, kind of wake up the dashboard. Okay, so I'll switch to asthma 01 again, since I've been using that as a demo. And this dashboard looks the same as it did before, except that down at the bottom, we've added a new piece for patient age. So I can compare performance on that measure between adults and pediatrics. And we do see in this particular performance measure that there is a disparity in the performance. If I want to then look at it and say, okay, well, what is it specific to pediatrics. I can click on pediatrics. That's going to filter the rest of these sections of the dashboard, and I can, keep browsing and comparing the data to see what performance is like across these different attributes. So that's the addition, patient age, that's now available. Just as a side note, these performance measure dashboards, we did a bunch of work on them to improve their responsiveness. So as you're clicking around on them, they'll be quite a bit more snappy than they were before. All right, so let me see if there's any questions. Oh, David said, is age normalized to age in years? Yes, it is. So if they were 120 months old or, whatever, then they were pediatric. Or if they were 5 days old, they were that would be 0 years and they were pediatric. Okay, any other questions? Great. Well, I encourage software developers or those with the technical resources. I know there's a user group developing R packages for the NEMSIS measures. I encourage groups like that to make use of this web service to pull in these national benchmark data. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Josh. All right, up next we have Randall, and he's going to first talk about blood documentation and then give an NASEMSO update.
All right, thank you, Lauri.
Yeah.
So today for the blood product, we've had a small working group of subject matter experts. They have met twice. That's kind of in addition to all the other work that's been going on with the DMC and NEMSIS and just gathering of the data. One of the topics that we did cover was the review of this Thor AABB document. This document was provided to the Data Managers Council from the Pre-Hospital Blood Transfusion Initiative Coalition. It was really just to sort of assist us with building this draft data dictionary. It kind of went through several areas of documentation to be collected, and the data managers just worked really closely with that document to make sure we had them all. With that, we have kind of created a draft data dictionary. There was a survey that went out on that. If anyone is interested in continue or to make any suggestions to the draft data dictionary, I'll put my email in the chat here at the end. You can email me and I'll send you the link. We really kind of looked for some of the existing data elements within the version 3.5.1 before just kind of going out there and trying to create some new ones. Some of the two that we're really looking at from the survey is a question about the flow rate. Does flow rate need to be captured? That would be different than the medication dosage and units. So that's just one of the questions. Another question we have out there for everyone in the survey is vascular access when it's not the procedure. And kind of what I mean by that is, do we want to know, if we have 2 IVs established, is it important to know which IV that medication was actually given through or the blood product was given through? So that's another question that's just on the survey as we continue to build out a draft data dictionary. Some of the highlights about the questions as well on that survey was about the volume of each blood product transfused, which was the E medications 05 and 6. We're also looking at any adverse events that were noted during this. Is this list from E medications 08 missing any type of reactions that can happen during the EMS clinicians encounter? We also sent the survey question out about vital signs. There's a lot of vital signs within the NEMSIS system. We're just making sure that we're not missing any that are specific to blood products. So that's just another question that had been sort of sent out. And another last kind of remaining question of an existing NEMSIS data element was labs or eLabs 03. So during many of the calls that we participated in, I heard someone mention hemoglobin. So we were able to find that within the field value list, and we're just kind of asking in the survey, are there any other labs or testing that could be performed for blood transfusion? These are all different areas of the existing. sorry, Clay, can you post the link to the blood survey here? Yes, I will post that link here in a second. And so we just kind of continue to go through the field values, make sure everything is present that we need with the existing data elements. So there is two surveys. One is about the existing data elements, and the second one is about the draft data dictionary. When we're going through the draft data dictionary portion, we're really looking to see if we want to include this data element, do not include this data element, or if we want to include this data element with some edits. So sometimes you may want to make an edit to the question or the definition for it. We're kind of open to all suggestions at that point. And then lastly, with the draft data dictionary, there were the 3 custom data elements that the DMC subcommittee decided to go ahead and move forward with, which was the blood product unit number, the blood donor type, and the donor RH factor. So those are going to be moving into the full DMC meeting on March 18th for approval. And if those need to be adjusted at all, we'll bring it back to the subcommittee. And like I said, Clay, I will post those links for the survey in the chat here after my next update. Any questions on that? Samantha?
Yeah, so when you're talking about this as a draft data dictionary, is this something that we expect to move into the NEMSIS standard, or is this going to be something separate that is just for blood administration? I'm a little unsure about that part of it, the intention.
I believe the intention here is just to make it part of the normal NEMSIS standard. When I'm using the word draft data dictionary, that's something that we've been Jen and myself have been doing back and forth just to kind of list all the elements, even if they are an existing element. So just a snapshot so we can see all the questions.
So is this extending e-medications then, or is this going to be adding a net new section to the NEMSIS standard?
This would be an extension of e-medications.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Lauri, I'll move right into the NASEMSO update if you're ready.
Yep.
All right. So for the Data Managers Council, a lot of talk about the critical patch. DMC is sort of working on a critical patch guidance document. We're really explaining the situation that NEMSIS is in with the executive order, some of the background on NEMSIS and the deprecated value, just an overall assessment on the new data elements and what recommendation is best for the states or local EMS agencies working with our EPCR vendors and NEMSIS. We're all kind of working at this together. But most importantly, this document will help the data managers at whatever level, state or local, have as much information so they can make the best decision for their data collection. Maybe something that they don't want to just make a decision on their own, and maybe they need to talk with their direct supervisors. So this is just another tool for them to be able to have as much information for that conversation. Custom data elements. I've kind of mentioned this a few times, but we're just still working on those 3 custom elements moving into the full DMC. That's the donor blood type, the donor RH factor, and the blood product unit number. My last update will be on the extended data definitions. We met yesterday and we discussed the new elements for version 3.5.1. We kind of discussed if these elements need more clarity to them. We also evaluated the field values from version 3.5.0 that are being changed or added, try to getting those into this new version. And so once all those updates are done, you will see a new 3.5.1 extended data dictionary just to kind of continue on with our work. Any questions about that one? And those are my updates for today, Lauri. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. I will share the agenda again here. We are almost wrapping up our meeting. So the last topic here is for me to mention, and it is our 2024 public release of our data set. We were targeting next week for that. March 17th was our goal, but unfortunately, due to the critical patch, we really needed to reallocate a lot of our time and resources and attention to prioritizing that. So this has been delayed, unfortunately, but we're targeting now the beginning of April. So we hope it's only a couple weeks delayed, but we are working on it simultaneously with the critical patch and hope to have it to you guys as soon as possible. So we'll let you know more as we get close to releasing that, but it will be slightly delayed. And upcoming meetings, March 26th is our next V3 call. And then I will just mention again, our annual meeting in Park City is August 26th through the 29th. And I know Monet is close to being able to open registration for that. We're ironing out a few details, but hope to have that to you soon to be able to register for annual meeting. Next topic is open forum. So does anyone have a topic they'd like to bring up or ask or discuss? All right, if not, we will move to our breakout rooms. And let me show you here. Jen, do you want to mention breakout room code of conduct again briefly?
Just be respectful of each other, and this is a collect and send week, so vendors that go into other vendors' rooms need to ask for permission to be there as soon as you get there. If you are noticed and you haven't said anything, you'll just be removed from the room by the TAC person that is running the room. And nope, let's go ahead and go.